Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to my channel, Thirsty Soul. Thank you for tuning in to watch me today. I would like to talk about the exciting but controversial topic of racism. Anybody who knows me knows I love talking about race. I understand it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think it's important for us to kind of deal with these issues and look into the mirror and see, actually, there is a lot of things a lot of things that my race affects in terms of the way I think, the way I feel about myself, etc. How does race impact us on a psychological level? That is what I want to talk to you about today. So I just want to go on a kind of a brief summary into what we're dealing with today, and then go more into the things I've seen personally and just in the world that basically impact and the psychological impacts of race, really. So, first of all, I think it's just important to admit that, especially as somebody of colour, being a black woman, being a black person, is that there is a lot of implicit biases that people have in society that affects us. For instance, what is going on in America today, with the shootings and stuff. I don't know if any of you have seen one of the shootings where the guy was just like, oh yeah, he looks like a big bad guy, and then we shot him. And I think it just goes to show, what is the definition of a big bad guy? He's black. You look at schools, teachers have been found to have an implicit bias against black boys, even from nursery, that they are gonna naturally be more hyperactive, less clever, all these things. That's going to affect the upbringing of your child if your child is treated differently from other children because of the colour of their skin, even from nursery. And also, it's about people just being able to admit that actually I do have these biases. I'm sure even I, as a black person, have these biases. If I was walking down the street and I saw a black guy in a hoodie behind me, would I think he's dangerous or not? We have to ask ourselves these questions. And how does it affect how we think as black people about ourselves is what I really want to focus on today. Because the amount of self-hatred I have seen in the black community and even in the Asian community is so high. I've seen people, say things like, well, as black people, we're cursed. We are the cursed children of Ham. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the biblical story of Prophet Noah and his 3 children. And some people say Ham is the starter or the founder of the African race, and he was cursed because he saw his dad get drunk. I've heard people say, black people should just be in prison for longer. I'm talking about fellow black people who say this because we're just naturally more aggressive and dangerous and all these things. And it's like, you're a black person. If you believe these things, if you believe that your race is naturally, basically inferior to all other races, how do you see yourself? How can you love yourself? How will you raise your children? What values will you give them? We have to ask ourselves these kind of questions, because although you might not even know that you have these views, you will act upon those views. It will manifest in a different way in conversations you have with people. These views will start showing. And as a black person personally, I refuse to believe these things. And as a Muslim, I believe that Allah has created us all equally. And these challenges that black people have faced, for instance, slavery or racism or things like that, we're not the only ones who have ever gone through these things. People don't know about the fact that before the transatlantic slavery, a lot of Eastern Europeans used to get enslaved by Western Europeans. And I don't know how true this is, but through my research, some linguists argue that the word slavery originates from the word Slav. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Slavic people in Eastern Europe, because they used to get enslaved. So the actual word slavery originates from their tribe, just as Algerian and Moroccan Berber people used to go all the way up to Ireland to enslave whites. You know, black people are not the only one who have ever had or been in contact with slavery. A lot of people, a lot of other peoples of the world have been in contact with slavery. So if we have this narrow view of history that we're the only ones who ever gone through slavery, I'm not undermining the impact of slavery here, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying other people have suffered. We are not the only ones, because if you internalize that we're the only ones who have suffered, I feel it can lead to one or two things. It can lead to you either saying, oh, we're just naturally inferior, or saying, well, we are, you know, everybody's bad and everybody hates us, and no, that is not the case. And again, going back to, I think, how it affects people in their day-to-day lives, growing up in the Muslim community, I've heard a lot of Asian people of color say a lot of things, you know, against the black, I don't want to say against the black community, but let me say against dark-skinned people in general, feeling this superiority to blacks because they're lighter than black people. And again, I think a lot of Asian people don't actually realize that they have these views. You know, they would never think they're racist people. However, it comes out through conversations. These views come out. And I ask people who have these views, you need to look inside yourself and think, am I projecting these biases onto my black friends? Even if you're a black person, and let's say you're a light-skinned black person, am I projecting certain internalized views of colorism onto my dark-skinned friends in general? You know, we need to ask ourselves these questions, because I feel like it's been so normalized that lighter is better that people don't even think it's offensive to say something, you know, like, oh, you know, all dark-skinned people are this, or dark-skinned this, or blick, or these kind of terminologies. It is offensive. People should not feel comfortable using these kind of terminologies. They really shouldn't. So that is a whole separate matter in its own. But it's just something I've observed really from the Muslim community. And in general, like, as a person of color, you just have to be very careful how you digest all the hatred and history around you. Because you could digest it in a positive way, or you could digest it in a negative way. And if you digest it in a negative way, that makes you hate your own self. This is where people start bleaching and try to contour their nose and not feeling good about themselves and hating on themselves and wanting to, you know, only date whites, and, you know, all these kind of things start coming about because of self-hatred. And it's not something someone will say to you, oh yeah, I hate myself, I hate being black. No, but it will come out in other forms. And I read this article the other day. This guy, I think he's called Author Richards or something like that, and he wrote an article on Muslim Matters called The Pain of Being a Black Muslim. He said every black person in America needs counselling. And although I'm not African American, I completely understand his point that if you're a black person and you are seeing that my skin colour can make me a victim of police brutality or even black on black crime just because of my skin colour, how do you deal with that? That is a lot to internalize. That's a lot to deal with on a daily basis, and it's very difficult. So if we don't start talking about these things, we're just going to be acting upon feelings that we're not talking about. So I just want to kind of bring out this conversation, basically bring it out, and I want you guys to tell me, what do you think about this? Whether you're a person of colour or not, what are your views on the psychological impacts of racism, prejudice, colorism, and how it affects us in our communities, you know? And for me, I just want to empower people to love themselves. That's my aim, you know? No matter what you are, whether you're black, whether you're Asian, whether you're white, love yourself for who you are. There's nothing wrong with God's creation. And that's the message I want to leave you with today. So please subscribe and please comment down below and tell me your views on this matter. And thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum. Bye.